This is about the top 10 haunted cemeteries in the world. Every cemetery is haunted, but there are just those that stands out that are more active. Before we start, please hit like and subscribe for more stories like this. Cemeteries become haunted in the stories people keep whispering because they are places where grief never really leaves, where names are carved into stone, where old prayers fade into moss, and where the living keep returning with fear, regret, flowers, candles, and questions that nobody alive can answer. Around the world, the oldest cemeteries were not always peaceful gardens of rest. Some were built after epidemics, fires, wars, executions, poverty, persecution, premature burials, desecrated graves, and forgotten bodies moved from one resting place to another. Over time, those places collect more than bones. They collect footsteps after closing, shadows that stand between tombs, voices that drift from sealed vaults, crying near children's graves, knocks from inside mausoleums, cold spots beside statues, pale figures walking paths, and the kind of silence that feels like something is listening from beneath the earth. Historic places like St. Louis Cemetery No. 1. Recoleta Cemetery, Père Lachaise, Okanoin, and Greyfriars are famous not only because of who is buried there, but because their age, architecture, legends, and human sorrow make them feel like cities of the dead that still remember every visitor. The worst cemetery stories usually start the same way, with someone going in after dark, laughing too loudly, touching a grave, daring a spirit to answer, calling a name they found on a stone, opening a gate that should have stayed closed, or treating the dead like entertainment instead of memory. That is when the atmosphere changes, the wind stops, the moon dulls behind clouds, the trees seem to lean closer, and every statue looks like it has turned its head by 1 inch. Some witnesses claim they hear whispers, bells, screams, invisible footsteps, dragging sounds, crying, chanting, or scratching from inside tombs, while darker legends speak of occult rituals, demonic shadows, cursed mausoleums, black figures, and spirits that follow people home. So here is the safe ending before the countdown begins. Do not break into cemeteries. Do not trespass after hours. Do not vandalize or mark tombs. Do not steal grave objects. Do not mock the dead. Do not perform rituals. Do not use spirit boards. Do not challenge anything to show itself. And never walk alone into a cemetery at night just because a legend dared you to. In places built for the dead, respect is not just manners. It may be the only thing that lets you leave with nothing following behind you. Starting at number 10, Bonaventure Cemetery in Savannah, Georgia, USA. Bonaventure Cemetery is ranked number 10 because its haunting is less about violent terror and more about deep Southern Gothic grief, moss-draped oaks, angel statues, family monuments, and stories that feel like they move quietly through the trees. The Bonaventure Historical Society focuses on preservation of the cemetery, while local haunted tour traditions often point to little Gracie Watson, a child who died of pneumonia before Easter in 1889, as one of the cemetery's most emotional ghost legends. Visitors and storytellers often describe the atmosphere around her statue as unusually heavy, with claims of crying, soft footsteps, childlike presence, and the feeling of being watched from the edge of the paths. Bonaventure earns its place because it looks like a cemetery designed by grief itself, beautiful in the daytime, but at night, under Spanish moss and moonlight, every statue can feel like it is waiting for the living to look away. And number 9, La Recoleta Cemetery in Buenos Aires, Argentina. La Recoleta Cemetery is ranked number 9 because it feels less like a graveyard and more like a silent city of marble, with over 90 tombs listed as National Historical Monuments, ornate mausoleums, shadowed corridors, religious iconography, Masonic symbols, and the tombs of Argentina's elite. Its most famous darker legend is tied to Rufina Cambaceres, often called the girl who died twice, whose story centers on the fear of premature burial and the terrifying idea of waking beneath stone after everyone has already mourned you. Whether taken as history, legend, or cemetery folklore, the story gives Recoleta its chilling identity: narrow lanes, sealed family vaults, statues guarding doors, and the sense that some tombs may have held more panic than peace. The hauntings here are usually told as whispers, figures near mausoleum doors, cold movement in the corridors, and the lingering dread of someone trying to get out after being placed inside too soon. Number 8, Resurrection Cemetery in Justice, Illinois, USA. Resurrection Cemetery is ranked number 8 because of one of America's most famous vanishing hitchhiker legends, Resurrection Mary. The story is tied to Archer Avenue near the cemetery, where reports going back to the 1930s describe drivers seeing or picking up a young woman in a white dress who vanishes near the cemetery gates. The Chicago History Museum notes that Mary is supposedly connected to Resurrection Cemetery and that researchers have never conclusively identified who she was, which makes the legend stronger, because a ghost without a final answer keeps returning in every retelling. The haunting is not usually described as screaming from graves or demonic figures in the tombs. It is quieter, colder, and more roadbound, a pale shape at night, headlights catching a dress, a sudden passenger, then an empty seat, as if the cemetery keeps sending one restless spirit back to the road where her story never ended. Number 7. Stoll Cemetery in Stoll, Kansas, USA. Stoll Cemetery is ranked number 7 because its reputation is built from pure rural dread, an old churchyard, ruined stone, cemetery gates, and stories that grew into one of the most infamous gateway to hell legends in American ghost folklore. Haunted history sources trace the Stoll legend into print in the 1970s, with claims about witchcraft, supernatural happenings, demonic forces, and the devil appearing at certain times of year, though these are folklore claims rather than verified facts. What makes Stoll effective as a horror location is the isolation, an overgrown cemetery on a hill, an abandoned church atmosphere, and a legend that warns people not just about ghosts, but about something darker beneath the ground. In stories, people report being grabbed by unseen hands, feeling watched, seeing strange lights, hearing movement near the ruins, and sensing that the place is not merely haunted by the dead, but guarded by something that does not want to be named. Number 6. Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, France. Père Lachaise Cemetery is ranked number 6 because it is one of the world's great cemeteries of fame, art, politics, grief, and obsession, opened in 1804 and now known for its vast garden-like grounds, ornate tombs, and famous burials. France's official tourism site describes it as a 110-acre cemetery with thousands of trees, while recent reporting highlights its ghost stories, spiritualist associations, occult rumors, and the strange legends connected to graves such as Jim Morrison, Allan Kardec, Victor Noir, and other heavily visited tombs. Père Lachaise feels haunted because it is crowded with memory. The graves are not forgotten. They are visited, touched, kissed, watched, filmed, vandalized, worshipped, and whispered to. Its reported hauntings are less like one single ghost and more like a whole cemetery breathing after dark. Footsteps on wet stone, figures between mausoleums, seance stories, occult gatherings, and the feeling that Paris's dead still have a nightlife of their own. Number 5. Okanoin Cemetery in Koyasan, Japan. Okanoin Cemetery is ranked number 5 because it is sacred, ancient, immense, and spiritually overwhelming rather than simply haunted in the Western ghost story sense. Japan Travel describes Okanoin as the sanctuary housing the mausoleum of Kobo Daisho, also known as Kukai, the founder of Shingon Buddhism, and legend says he remains in eternal meditation. Other travel sources describe Okanoin as one of Japan's most sacred places, with a path through the cemetery lined by towering cedars, old stone lanterns, moss-covered memorials, and countless graves. The fear here comes from reverence. Visitors walking at night often describe the lantern light, forest silence, and stone monuments as otherworldly, as if the dead are not restless but present. The hauntings are told through atmosphere, shadows between cedar trunks, the feeling of being accompanied on the path, and the sense that every grave marker is part of a spiritual boundary the living should cross only with humility. Number 5. Okanoin Cemetery in Koyasan, Japan. Okanoin Cemetery is ranked number 5 because it is sacred, ancient, immense, and spiritually overwhelming rather than simply haunted in the Western ghost story sense. Japan Travel describes Okanoin as the sanctuary housing the mausoleum of Kobo Daisho, also known as Kukai, the founder of Shingon Buddhism, and legend says he remains in eternal meditation. Other travel sources describe Okanoin as one of Japan's most sacred places, with a path through the cemetery lined by towering cedars, old stone lanterns, moss-covered memorials, and countless graves. The fear here comes from reverence. Visitors walking at night often describe the lantern light, forest silence, and stone monuments as otherworldly, as if the dead are not restless but present. The hauntings are told through atmosphere, shadows between cedar trunks, the feeling of being accompanied on the path, and the sense that every grave marker is part of a spiritual boundary the living should cross only with humility. Number 4. St. Louis Cemetery Number 1 in New Orleans, Louisiana, USA. St. Louis Cemetery Number 1 is ranked number 4 because New Orleans already feels like a city where the dead never fully leave, and this cemetery is its oldest surviving burial ground, established in 1789 after fires and an epidemic strained the older burial space. Its above-ground tombs, narrow walkways, cracked plaster, heat, humidity, and maze-like layout give it the feeling of a city of the dead pressed tightly against the living city. Its most famous spiritual figure is Marie Laveau, the legendary voodoo queen of New Orleans, whose tomb and legacy remain central to the cemetery's haunted reputation, though responsible sources separate her real historical importance from the supernatural claims around her. Reported hauntings include figures moving between tombs, footsteps in empty aisles, whispers near vaults, and the feeling that offerings, prayers, and forbidden marks left by visitors have made the cemetery a charged spiritual place where respect is not optional. Number 3. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery in Midlothian, Illinois, USA. Bachelor's Grove Cemetery is ranked number 3 because it has one of the strongest haunted reputations in the American Midwest, with paranormal stories circulating since at least the 1950s. Cemetery history sources and local reporting describe a secluded burial ground damaged by vandalism and surrounded by woods, which helped its legends grow. A woman in white, phantom lights, ghostly cars, vanishing houses, strange figures near the pond, and the feeling that the cemetery changes shape when people enter it after dark. WBEZ notes that residents have repeated stories about apparitions and a ghostly house, while the cemetery's own paranormal history page says tales have circulated for decades. Bachelor's Grove is ranked high because its hauntings are not tied to only one ghost. The whole site behaves like a haunted zone, where roads, trees, water, graves, and darkness all seem to participate in the fear. Number 2. Highgate Cemetery in London, England. Highgate Cemetery is ranked number 2 because its haunting became a modern media legend, especially during the Highgate vampire panic of the late 1960s and 1970s. Reports described a gray figure, a tall dark man, spectral forms, a woman in white, bells, voices, and eerie movement around the cemetery and nearby Swains Lane. The story then escalated into claims of a vampire, occult activity, desecration, and a wave of public fear. Folklore research treats the Highgate vampire as a media-driven supernatural legend rather than proven fact, but that is exactly why the place feels so powerful for horror narration. It shows how a cemetery could become haunted by rumor, panic, vandalism, and imagination as much as by the dead. With Victorian tombs, overgrown paths, shadowed statues, and stories of black figures watching from the trees, Highgate feels like a place where the legend itself learned how to breathe. And finally, the most haunted cemetery in the world. Ranked number 1 is Greyfriars Kirkyard in Edinburgh, Scotland. Greyfriars Kirkyard is ranked number 1 because it combines brutal history, religious persecution, old Edinburgh atmosphere, a famous graveyard, and one of the most aggressive poltergeist legends in cemetery folklore. Greyfriars Kirk notes that the site was built on the grounds of a pre-Reformation Franciscan monastery, while later history ties the kirkyard to the Covenanters prison and the mausoleum of Sir George Mackenzie, remembered in legend as Bloody Mackenzie. Modern ghost tour sources and local haunted histories claim the Mackenzie poltergeist is linked to the Black Mausoleum, with reports of scratches, bruises, fainting, cold spots, unseen blows, and terrifying sensations near the locked area. Greyfriars earns the top place because its haunting is not just visual, it is physical in the stories, as if the dead are not content to be seen from a distance, but want the living to feel the punishment, the prison, the stone, and the anger still trapped under Edinburgh's rain-darkened ground.
Thank you for your support. And thank you for tuning into the darkest horror stories of your life. Some of the stories are based on true events or experiences. Please do us a favor. If you could hit like, share this video, and subscribe to our channel. Never listen alone, and stay tuned for a new horrors and stories.